Welcome to another episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, a guide podcast. I hope wherever you are staying safe, healthy, indoors, as the world is going through so much pain due to the riots and what we're seeing in the world. Please stay safe, stay humble, and more importantly, keep focused in creating the future that you want to see. With that said, I have an awesome guest today who is actually my former professor at the University of Texas High School. He is a UX design leader, mentor, and professor and practitioner on all things experience design. And we're going to be chatting today a little bit about his UX career and background, as well as where he sees the field going in terms of the future of work. And I'm really excited to have him on the episode today just because he's an awesome guy, really stellar, a master at his craft, and taught me a lot of the things that I know about user experience design. So with that said, hey, Professor Nordquist, it's good to have you on the show, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
How are you doing? How are you holding up with everything going on in the world right now?
Oh man, honestly, I'm hiding here on the boat down in South Texas. I'm just trying to stay focused on what I'm trying to do. It's just you gotta pick your battles, and right now the battle for me is just trying to make sure I'm just spreading as much information as I can, to students, so that it just kind of empower them with their careers. So I'm just staying focused on that right now, honestly.
Yeah. So talk to me, Dr. Nordquist, Professor Nordquist, because you actually don't have a PhD, but you are a professor. So talk to me a little bit about how you kind of got started in that passion of helping students really understanding how to take control of their careers and pursue a field in passion design.
Yes, I think, let's see, honestly, it probably comes down to the fact that my wife and I never had any kids. So there's always I don't know, it feels like as an adult, almost your primary responsibility needs to be passing on information to the youth so that as a society we keep growing and getting better, and since I didn't have really, that was kind of an empty place, I guess, for me, and so many people had helped me, right? The only reason, honestly, that I've been successful is just a handful of people, that just dropped some knowledge on me, and it just kind of started to resonate where it's like, that's what I should be doing, like, how can I somehow not just help, whatever kids I'd had, but how can you help, more people? How can you start to help society, and it's just kind of So I was actually just giving a lecture at Texas State University, and afterwards the dean of the I think it's psych department came up and said, hey, I'm thinking about starting a human factors program. Would you be interested in, maybe adjuncting and teaching a course and trying to build some momentum so we could hire faculty and start to build that out here at the Texas State University? And I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So I did that for a couple of years and ended up filling up that class every semester. So they were able to show value to the provost and get a full faculty tenure spot approved. So they ended up hiring somebody full-time for that program. And then from there it led over to UT, and it's just been going ever since then.
So talk to me a little bit about how you got started in your UX career. By the way, if you're listening to this right now and tuning in, let us know, what career field are you pursuing? Are you a design major? Are you passionate about design? Are you currently in school for it? Let us know in the comments below, and let us know where you're viewing and tuning in from as well. So Eric, what kind of pursued you to, start your career in design?
Yeah, it's, like everybody else, I grew up as a little kid wanting to be a UX designer, because we all, bullshit, no one knows what the hell UX is as a little kid. So let's see, I was supposed to be a doctor, I think, kind of in high school. I was going the pre-med route and taking classes to prep for that. And then I heard you had to practice sticking each other with needles, and I don't do good with blood and needles. So I figured that probably wouldn't be a good option for my career. So, and then in college, I just started spending a lot of time in psych. I just like psychology so much, just trying to understand people, but I didn't like the idea of having to sit and listen to people's problems all day. It seems like a horrible career for me. So my senior year, I did a presentation. My senior semester, I did independent study, and I talked to my mentor there, and I was like, I should have got a damn business degree so I can get a job and make some money. And the psych degree isn't going to do anything for me. Yeah. So they're like, well, just go do some research and see how, psychology and business can somehow overlap. Because in my mind, I was like, I got to flip this psych resume into a business resume quick, or I'm not getting a job. So So yeah, just hit up the library and started searching, honestly, just keyword searching psychology and business, and
Yeah.
started getting hits on industrial organizational psych, and usability and human factors. Because back then UX wasn't a thing, design thinking, all that mess wasn't a thing at all. So I ended up just writing a paper and presented that. And sure as shit enough, man, one of the faculty was like, we actually have an alumni who just moved to Austin and is building out the usability team at Dell. You should go talk to him.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so I popped up there. That's Keith Kozak, the dude that started it all for me. So I popped up there and had an internship there. Supposed to be a 3-month internship. It turned into like a year and a half. And
Wow.
finally they were like, go get a degree so we can hire you. So I had never in my life thought I was going to go get a master's degree. Like I was the first at that time in my family to have an undergrad degree. So I didn't know shit about grad school. I didn't think I could do any of that stuff. So,
Yeah.
but everybody there at Dell had it. They all had done it. And I was like, well, I'm doing what they're doing here, so I guess I can do it. So took off and got that grad degree. So that's how it all kind of started for me.
Man, that and it's so powerful, right? Because you were learning as you go. And shout out to Keelan and shout out to Chris who are tuning in right now and listening in on this amazing conversation I'm having with the awesome Eric Nordquist. So, for you, did you experience any failure during that process? Because I think, I talk to a lot of people when they're trying to build anything, I think they get so lost in the failure, right? They it causes them to lose hope and they really forget to see the end in mind, in a sense.
Yeah.
So like as you were kind of navigating, for you early on, did you experience failure? Were you ever upset?
Oh yeah, hell yeah, all the time. It still happens, I think yeah, for sure. So I mean, absolutely. Let's see. I mean, of course there's all kinds of mess ups I had at Dell as an intern, and I think overcoming those was honestly just having that mentality of like, yeah, I'm just gonna figure it out, like I'm not gonna accept failure. And I think I'm always been my hardest critic. So if somebody catches something, I had probably caught 20 things before that I'd kind of made sure to correct before they saw that one thing that I missed or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, let's see, even just applying to grad schools, like I didn't get into 2 of them, got into 2 of them. So it's like, okay, I'll just go ahead with this path, I guess. It's more of I don't know, for me, it's like, as you always just grind and keep working. Like it always will find a way, like I've never had, even in the failures, it helps you. So then in the next time, maybe you don't do it. But then honestly, if you see somebody else headed in that path, it's again, kind of back to that thing where, I think my key benefit now to society is being able to pass on knowledge, because I've messed up so many damn times. And if I can just share some of those mess ups with people, and then they'll be just that further ahead in the game for me whenever they're coming up, because they'll be able to avoid some of those mess ups as well, So yeah, absolutely. Failure's part of it. I mean, it's the whole cliche, if you're not failing, you're not trying kind of a thing, but it's absolutely true, and I think it's just kind of living in the uncomfortable space too. I think that's one of the other reasons my wife and I both, just kind of ditched the house and ditched kind of the normal careers and got on the boat and started teaching, because it's like we had done that other life for 15 years and it wasn't a big challenge anymore. We just kind of found ourselves falling into a rut or a groove, and it's like, let's go try this totally new thing. We're gonna fail our ass off, but at the same time, that's what's fun. If you're not failing, you're not trying anything that cool, really.
It's true. And do you think that a lot more people are going to take that route now with everything that's been going on with COVID-19 and how a lot of people are migrating away from cities?
I don't know, man. I hope. The problem, I mean, I've seen I'm not that old. I haven't seen a lot of these things, but I've seen enough of these kind of game changer things where it's like, oh, this is going to change how people think about things, forever or whatever. And as humans, I think unfortunately sometimes we've got really short memories, so like 2 years from now, if all this goes away and there's no more COVID, like no one's going to remember. We're going to have to think back on, oh yeah, man, that is funny. I remember the time when we all were doing that thing. But so I don't know. I mean, I hope what I've just been telling a lot of my students is, at a minimum, just try and remember that not to take anything for granted from a career standpoint, because we had such a good run, me placing these students, in these UX careers where they're popping in at $75,000 to $100,000 a year, and a lot of them now have either been laid off, their contracts were cut, and it's like at the end of the day, like none of that stuff's guaranteed, So when you sign that first contract and you get that 90 grand, like do not run out and spend all that shit. I hope they just kind of realize now that it's like you just always got to be thinking about yourself in the future, because at the end of the day, that's what I think this is showing, is at the end of the day that the companies will cut you, so that they survive. So why are you not thinking of yourself in the same way? What are you cutting out of your life so that you survive?
Yeah. No, that's a very wise look too, right? So I want to show love to Luann, who's tuning in from Austin. She is saying, I'm fascinated by the intersection of art, design, psychology, and user experience for social change. Eric, what are your thoughts on this, man?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think we've taken a bit of a turn from back in the day. If you think about human factors and usability, like that's rooted in psychology. Like everybody that kind of came up the path that I came from a psych background. There's a little bit back then of kind of industrial design overlap because we weren't designing software, we were designing physical artifacts, but now since we pivoted more to design thinking, we've kind of opened this door up to so many other disciplines. We've lost not totally lost, but there's not as much emphasis now on everybody at least has a psych background. Like we've got folks in UX now who maybe took a Psych 101 class back in undergrad, but that's it, and here they are talking about doing everything for the user. And it's like, they don't honestly, how have they learned about the user? They've got methods that they've learned through UX, but from a foundational level about just how does the human brain work and memory and sensation and perception, it's something that's missing, I think, a bit. But I think it's just because of the demand. UX just had such a huge demand that we had to start grabbing people from all different backgrounds because we weren't pumping them out fast enough from the psych standpoint. So
yeah, it's true. It's true. And, I think what's so fascinating is a lot of people still don't even understand what user experience is.
Oh, yeah, no, dude. Every client, that we get, even now at the university, people will write me in on grants and they'll be like, what do you do again? Like, are you, honestly, their first reaction is just kind of color, right? Where the people, like I always say in class, where the people bring the box of crayons and just color shit so it's pretty. Like that's what they think we do at the end of the day, and it's such a disservice, where it's like, okay, if that's what you think, but let me actually show you, how we actually come up with stuff. So no, it's absolutely, I think, we hear a lot about all this bubble stuff with politics these days and how people live in their bubbles and how social media is just, propagating bubbles and everything. And it's the same thing with our UX community. Like we all sit around and talk about UX all day. I teach it all day. My students are surrounded by it all day. So we just think the whole world knows UX. And as soon as you leave the doors, nobody even knows what the hell the term means. Never mind what any of the methods we use are, So yeah, it's still it's crazy because it's like so popular, but it's almost like people are hiring it in their businesses because they see other successful businesses have it, not because they actually know what it is and think their company's missing that thing. It's almost like, oh shit, I heard Apple's really good because they've got a user experience team. I don't have one of those. Let me get one of those. And then they get a person and they're like, I don't know what you do. Go do something. So we get a lot of that also. Students will get hired into startups, who think they need a UX person, but they honestly don't even know what the hell it is. So the students, they're just trying to teach them what UX is even about. Now they're going to have to, change up some of their development process to allow UX to come into their sprints and stuff. And it's just constantly a struggle that we're going through.
Yeah. So, what are your recommendations for business leaders, right? Because, one of the things that I stress really adamantly with, my co-founder and I, we're very, very aligned on, okay, we always have to think about what's the experience of our product, like end-to-end integration, how are we thinking through and being essential and intentional about every single thing. And, I think you see a lot of waste in companies. And I've worked at companies where they've literally went bankrupt because they got too greedy in a sense. So how do you think, business leaders can think of building a user experience design competency within their organization?
Yeah, it's got to start at the top, right? It's got to be something that the leadership team kind of sees as a necessity, but not just. I think what they do is they kind of say, oh, I think I need that thing. And then they go hire somebody and then nobody really listens to that somebody. It's almost like leadership needs to sit down and go through a workshop or a course, with that UX individual that they hired so that leadership starts using the correct terms and start seeing how, there may be a bit of a slowdown for a bit here, as UX ramps up and as we go back and do some necessary research. So productivity may slow down for a smidge, but it's actually way better because in the long run, the efficiency gain is going to be worth it. So I think that's one of the problems I see a lot. Like I said, is that people just say they need this thing. They hire an individual, or a team of individuals, and then it's up to that team to now go convince the rest of the company that they actually have value, even though leadership thought they had value because that's what brought them in the first place. But leadership doesn't actually spend the time to understand it themselves. So it's hard to then fight for it, as the team's going through trying to make change. Because typically UX is brought in late after there's already been a problem. Right. So it's like the company's already launched. They're not doing as well as they thought. They're missing some of the marks. People don't think that it's what they wanted. It's like whatever was in the head of leadership hasn't translated to the customer. And they're like, oh, shit, what do we do? Maybe we should go hire these UX people. So then they bring the UX team in and the UX team's like, we got to make some changes. The product isn't doing what people want. We need to go back and, candle model, adjust our feature set, figure out what's going on. And all that's going to delay the roadmap because there was already a roadmap in place and agreed upon by the board or whatever whenever the UX person was brought in, and now you've got an individual saying that we need to pause all that and rethink it. So it's an interesting conundrum to be in, where as a business you have to keep plowing forward at lightning speed, but at the same time you're recognizing as you're plowing forward that you're outputting a lot of inefficiency because you haven't done the process correctly. So you're trying to interject the correct process without slowing down the machine, and it's usually not possible. So a lot of times what I'll do is we'll come in and hopefully the dev team's got a whole bunch of like back-end architecture stuff that they need to go tweak or work on or bring up to speed, or now that they've launched for a year, they figure out that their back-end isn't robust enough. So great, give me at least a few sprints where you're not asking me to create screens, create mock-ups, or do any UI stuff. Like, let's just give me a month at least to go off and do some user research while you work on that back-end stuff. So that's been one way that we've been able to kind of interject ourselves without really slowing down productivity at all, is just kind of having the dev team focus on back-end stuff for a bit.
That's smart. So for a leader that doesn't know like user experience, it wasn't trained in it. So you encourage them to like really make it a priority from the onset, right? Don't make it like a back end. Oh, it's the second thing to do. Make it the number one thing you think about as soon as you start building a product.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna pay for it in the end anyways, right? Yeah. So we all get excited. We've all done I'm excited and want to have a startup path, right? So we sit down, we're like, oh shit, I got an idea. And we tell our friend, hey, I've got this idea. And your friend's like, oh shit, that sounds awesome. I want to be part of that idea. And you're like, all right, cool. And y'all sit down and just start hacking stuff up for a week or a month or whatever. And then you launch it and you're like, yay, there's our cool thing. And it doesn't ever go anywhere because you never talk to a user, and it's so interesting how so many startups that get funded. I mean, we've had clients that have gotten $250,000 out of Google Ventures, and they hadn't talked to a user. Whenever we ask them, who did you talk to vet this business plan out, this idea and this product? It's like, oh, our potential customers. And then when we start talking to those customers, it's all their friends that they used to work with. So it's like, they're not really potential customers. It'd be like me coming to you and saying, hey, Tim, I got this idea. What do you think? And you're like, oh, it sounds awesome. I'm like, oh, great. Tim's a potential customer and he likes it. So I should go forward with my idea. So it's like so many of these companies that we read about just kind of start that way. It's just, I've got an idea or I'm at a company and I see an issue. So I'm just going to go try and fix it without actually talking to anybody else. One of the smartest things that I ever saw was an individual who had an idea for the direction of a company, brought UX in to mock up, prototype, and test the CEO's idea. The CEO then goes to potential customers, like honest customers, and says, hey, here's a prototype. Go through this prototype. Have your users use this prototype. If you like it, sign on the dotted line that you will buy it if I make it. Yeah. And this individual went around and did that for 5 or 6 companies and got, a couple $1 million worth of sales before the thing was even built.
Wow.
So start about totally starting with the UX side, right? I mean, it was us working with the CEO of the company to build out a prototype that was then sold on the premise that it would be built and how much would they pay if it were built. and then using those signatures that then helped him get all of his investment dollars to go build it. And then he just built what we had already designed. And our process had, of course, all the user-centered design flow in it. So, I mean, that was one of the best scenarios that I'd ever seen before. And I was like, that's genius. Like actually just selling vaporware that we had created,
Yeah.
And then using those signed contracts to go off and secure funding from investors saying, just give me the 500 grand now to build this. I've already got $2 million booked. Like this is a no brainer. So he had no problem getting the money and ended up getting bought by a larger company for millions of dollars.
Wow, that's crazy. And, I love that because it speaks to the nature of rapid prototyping and iteration, right?
Yeah.
It's just going through the process again and again. And I think, in business today, it's often that people don't realize that you always have to be iterating.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like you can't. You shouldn't have any stop gaps in your product development process.
Yeah. I mean, I think the genius thing that I witnessed with that individual was typically a startup. The first thing they do is go hire devs. Well, usually they hire a marketing person first. They go hire a marketing person to start spinning everything and selling. Then they go hire devs to start building. This individual did it the opposite way, where he actually brought UX in first. And it's cheap. You only need, 2 UX people compared to a whole dev team and some marketing folks. We went off and did user-centered design, did our interviews, did some mock-ups, tested the mock-ups, iterated the mock-ups, and got a prototype. So within 3 months, he had a functioning product, and functioning in air quotes, because of course there was no dev behind it. But if you go take it to a customer, things clicked and they could see what the product was going to be. So it was enough to sell and secure contracts that way. So, instead of this mindset of, hey, I'm a startup, I got to move fast, this whole lean UX, lean startup, it's all about moving fast and testing my ideas early and often. Yeah, absolutely, that's true. But you don't have to test functional code. Go test your InVision prototype. Go test your Figma prototype. Like, you don't have to hire a developer right away, And it's actually, to your point around inefficiency, it's way more efficient not to hire a developer, because once a developer comes in and starts laying a framework and starts picking, dev packages to use, now UX's hands are tied a bit because I have to do whatever grid system the front end devs using or something like that. So if you actually just bring in, leadership team and UX, and you guys just plow forward on what the product should be, it doesn't have to be leadership team, whatever the size of the company is. Typically in larger companies, it'll be the product manager. So just give a product manager and a UX team of 2 or 3 and just go plow forward for a month or 2, and you'll have your product by the end of the day, tested and vetted, and then you bring in dev to build it out. Now, no disrespect to dev, typically we'll have someone from dev just kind of looking in on the whole process to make sure we're not going too far off the rails on all the stuff we're designing in our mock-ups so that they can't build it at the end of the day. So, I mean, you always got to stay synced up with everybody, but yeah, that's how, in my opinion, you move really quick. Right?
Yeah.
It's just everybody get out the way. Let's just go talk to users. I mean, it's almost that. It's what Jake Knapp talks about in his sprint book. There's no dev in that sprint book. There's no developers there yet. It's like we're not at that phase. We're just trying to build something so we can go test it. And I just think the genius thing, that one story that I told you ended with, was he actually got sales contracts sold just from that prototype.
Wow. So, yeah. No, and it's true. And I think UX is where UX is now, like not more than ever. I think people are craving for simple, elegant to use experiences. I mean, you can think about so many of the products that have been really, really popular for like the last 10 years. I mean, you start with an app and then you go into a platform, but people, now more than ever want simplicity and want something that's beneficial too, that's actually quality.
Yeah. No, I think I've been talking about this for a couple of years, so I'm lazy on this front, and that I haven't done that on blog post or whatnot. But I mean, I think honestly, UX hasn't changed that much in years. Like, we're at the point where we need a new paradigm shift, because all we're doing right now is improving tools. That's it. We got Sketch, which is a game changer, coming off of all the Adobe stuff. And now we got Figma, which is a step up from Sketch. But if you look back the last 5 years, 4 years, whatever it is, like, that's really all that's come out as far as UX standpoint. No new methods have come out. Nothing else has really happened. We're just advancing our tools some so that we're faster. And that's it at the end of the day, And it's like, at some point, the thing that I think has to happen in the UX community is we've got to shift away from us creating buttons and just icons and patterns on a screen. Like that stuff is so individual specific that we're never going to win that way. Like what you want your button to look like is not what 98% of other people want their button to look like. So as a UX person, we're never going to create that. We've got this weird mentality right now where we say that we're designing for users, but we're really designing for one user, right? I mean, at the end of the day, there's one ebay.com. I mean, there's one. I mean, how many different user segments do they have? And they've got one website, you know? So it's like, and that goes for anybody. That goes for, go look at Dell.com, go look at Apple.com, and go look at them by country. Like there's no difference to their websites by country. It's just a language change. So you can't tell me the design system that you picked actually was the best design system in Japan and the US and India. Like there's no way. Those design cultures are totally different, you know? So we're at a place right now where we can't, well, we go off and test individual users. We'll test hundreds, thousands of individual users. We'll then create personas out of those individual users. So we'll have hundreds or thousands of individual data points that will then collapse or average into 5 personas. And then we're going to design on the average of those 5 personas. So our final website is an average of an average, even though we had individual data. And the problem is we don't have any way as a designer to know the individual that's using it. We don't have that data flow, right? Apple doesn't open up the data on the iPhone to my app to let me know what other apps are on that user's phone. Because if I know that Tim has Slack on his phone and Tim is used to a UI pattern where there's an off-canvas element that can slide from the left, well, then I can take advantage of that. But if it's my grandma's phone, she doesn't have anything like that. So she wouldn't be able to take advantage of that. We're not able to design at that level right now.
Yet, right? And I think it's coming too from some of the things I've been reading around kind of adaptive UI design and you know how there's a lot of now AI is on the edge and AI is in everything in terms of in your smartphone and on your computer and your apps. You know, do you think we're moving towards this future of data-driven design? Because even platforms like a Figma and a lot of different platforms are actually now leveraging AI and automation, where you can like create components and then you put them in systems and then you can automate that entire process.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, that would be the hope. I mean, still in most companies today, there's a dev team, front-end devs. They ask a UX person to create the mock-ups, and then front-end dev goes and builds the UI based on the mock-ups. I mean, they're all still being, you know, coded manually at most places to this day. So, I mean, kind of where you're at with all the stuff they're talking about around AI, machine learning seems to be a lot around like, you know, preference engines, you know, and like if you like this, you'll also like that kind of stuff. Yeah. But that's more like shaping the content for you and kind of pushing content. It's not actually adapting the UI. Like we don't have like YouTube doesn't change my UI compared to my wife's UI. It changes the content on the screen, but the actual UI is the same. Yeah. You know, like the way the buttons function. And I don't know, we got to get past that, because I think where UX really, as a UX researcher and even designer, I think where we really shine and where our products can really start to work is in context specific situations, right? It's like Spotify's tried a little bit, and I think they're one of the only ones, honestly, where their UI changes in the car versus outside of the car, right? So they actually have a UI that changes based on context. It's still a little clunky as it hops through, and kind of what they've got going on in the car isn't, you know, all perfectly ironed out yet, but it's awesome kind of step forward, because I think that's where we actually have a lot more value. Like I was talking to Kai, one of the students at the high school, you know, about what if you're a dad and you're taking the kids to soccer in the minivan or something like that, and the kids are yelling in the back, so you tell your YouTube channel to start playing some movie for them through the van, right? Well, in that situation, YouTube will know if you're using voice to say, hey, YouTube, play Frozen or something. It'll know from your voice, or it could know, it doesn't, but it could know basically the emotional state that you're in. And they'd be able to pick up that you're kind of stressed right now. There's kids screaming in the background, and I can tell from your tone of voice, like we've got research, we can tell kind of current state of emotion based on voice, intonation and stuff. So YouTube needs to be wise in that situation and don't play your damn ad right now. Like save your ad for when they're not in that situation, And like we're not at a place yet where I can take all of the contextual cues that I have and actually adapt the design to that specific situation. And that's where we've got to get to at the end of the day. That's where it needs to be. Like even, low light versus high light. If you're using a keyboard versus like a large keyboard versus your laptop keyboard, if you're using a touchpad versus a trackpad versus a mouse, you're using your voice. If you're on a bus, like especially as we start moving more into voice stuff and, augmented reality and virtual reality, like that shit's all cool until I'm sitting in the doctor's office. And when I'm sitting in the doctor's office waiting room, I can't use my voice at all, and the phone knows where I'm at. So that UI should change and not expect me to give it a voice command at that point.
Yeah.
And that's just where we're not at all right now. We're still just doing the same thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, we're still learning. So shout out to everyone that's been commenting. Luann is asking, Eric, can you share more about your vision for the new paradigm shift in terms of where UX is going? So I'll let you answer that, brother.
Yeah, I mean, basically just kind of along those same lines I'm at. I think UX is a commodity that loses its value if we just keep on this path of being the people that come in and, maybe make a few tweaks, but make the screens look pretty. At the end of the day, we're going to be able to create automation to make stuff look pretty. Like we're going to be able to kind of handle that. I think the part that AI struggles with right now is taking a lot of the inputs that humans can perceive and make decisions on, right? Like I can see, if we had our cameras on right now, I could tell from your facial expression if I need to pick up my pace or not, if you're getting bored or not bored, but I can adjust what I'm saying based on that. AI isn't there yet, right? That's a big step still from AI to be able to pick up these subtle cues and see what's going on. So UX designers have a long ability before AI will catch up with us being able to actually tailor user interfaces to contextual situations that users are in. And I'm not going to be able to sit there and look over your shoulder and go, oh no, Tim's in this situation right now. What should I do with my UI? But I will be able to know that as a designer at YouTube, people watch my videos in all kinds of situations. So let me map out every situation where people are watching videos and let me have a UI design that'll adapt to that. Like there's a totally difference say me and you are chilling in the break room and you're sitting there at lunch watching your phone propped up on the table, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, Eric, you got to come see this. This is awesome. We just changed to like a 2-person viewing experience from a 1-person viewing experience, right? And the UI will could know that, but it doesn't do anything today to adapt for that. Like should the volume go up a little bit? Like what should happen in an experience where we've now gone from a 2-person experience to a 1-person experience or vice versa? And that's where our value, I think, in the future needs to come from more, not sitting down saying, I think this button radius should have 8 pixels instead of 12 pixels. Like that's not doing it anymore, like let's let people's preferences, let's let somebody on their phone who already uses apps where all the buttons are rounded and seems to be happy with that, just automatically take our UI and apply rounded buttons to it. Let's get out of the game of defining what button radiuses should be. Instead, let me free up my UX team to go figure out the different contexts people are using my tools in, and let me design specific interactions for those different contexts.
Yeah.
That's where I think
that's the next level. Yeah. Chris is saying, I agree that AI can come a long way. However, I work on smart buildings that employ many of the things discussed. So I think he's seeing that at front and center. So shout out to Chris. He's a senior user experience designer. Shout out to you, Chris. Keep fighting the good fight. So my homeboy Keelan, he's saying, how do you intersect psychology and a business degree? What are your thoughts on that, Eric? Because I'm a psychology major, and more importantly, when I was at the high school, I was getting my degree in a master's of science and information studies, but we were focused on learning UX. And business is another area that I think complements UX, but a lot of UX majors and psychology majors, they don't really understand business. What are your thoughts on how you can fuse psychology and business?
Yeah, so one of the things I try and do in my courses is make sure I start to bring in business course books, right? So in my rapid prototyping course, which is just a design course, we still go ahead and read the smart smart UX playbook. It basically talks all about value propositions, market segments, things like that. Because as well, from psychology to business, right now the path I took is going to be, it's either human factors, industrial, organizational, or honestly today it's pretty much UX. Like there's not too many careers outside of like NASA and the military and Boeing and stuff in human factors anymore. So you're going to end up being a user experience researcher or designer, kind of at the end of the day. And from UX into business, it's really just getting into the situation, starting to hear the words and learn the terms, because you've got to know from a psychological standpoint how to present your stuff so that it'll have the most impact, right? Because at first, if you go into, I don't know, like say we're having our weekly UX design sync and we're all sitting around talking about design methods and I don't know, design thinking and affinity diagramming and post-it notes and storyboards. And we're like, oh, this is so awesome. And we're on our artsy fartsy kick. If we then transition over into a marketing meeting where, those men and women sit around and look at financial spreadsheets all day with numbers, and we start talking about how on our side of the building, we're drawing people on storyboards and putting Post-its on the wall, and that's our job. Like, that sounds ridiculous, right? It sounds like we're a bunch of hippies over there doing nothing. So what we try and talk about is how do you frame what we do in a way that business people understand? And I think that's one of the key things that as a UX employee you have to do to be successful, because if you go in trying to pitch your idea based on all of your UX methods and you're confident because of the different UX methods you have, and if no one else in the company, say you're going to talk to the project managers or the marketing team, they're not up to speed on all those UX methodologies. So you have to learn their language and massage your output into their language, right? Instead of saying personas, say market segments, right? At the end of the day, it's the same thing. There's not a big difference. It's just marketing learned a different technique or a different method or a different word than we did. But at the end of the day, it's groups of users, and how do we focus on groups of users? And instead of talking about, we've got to really focus a lot on return on investment, because it's really hard. I mean, you can experience it at Guide. If you've got a certain amount of money and somebody from your UX team says, "Ooh, I've got this really good idea. It's going to look really sexy. It'll cost 20 grand." Well, what is sexy worth? What does sexy even mean, right? Or like, I've got something to really improve the experience. I need 20 grand, Tim, to go improve the experience. Like, well, what does improve the experience mean? Like baseline to what? Like everybody else that pitches to the executives pitch in a dollars and cents type of mentality, right? They'll go up and pitch and say, "Hey, right now it's costing us X amount of dollars. If we do this, it'll only cost us this amount of dollars. So you're going to make this much and I need this much to go make it happen." So I really strive as a UX person, right, to teach the students to think in that mentality, right? So
from a goal-driven standpoint, right?
Yeah, by baselining. Like if you're going to go do a usability study, baseline it against the current, right? And then put some data and some pain around the current experience. How many support calls are coming at the current experience, and how much does each support call cost? And with your experience, how are the support calls going to be reduced, and how much money is that going to be saved? So always trying to think from a business standpoint, from a dollars and cents standpoint, at the end of the day, as your pitching has been hugely successful, I think.
Yeah, that's powerful. Shout out to Jamie, who's saying that it's all about the ROI and showing the value up front. Thoughts on that, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the point that I try and drive home in the students so much is, as we're learning about all these UX methods, there's not a lot from a dollar standpoint. So you really got to just understand how businesses run so that you can try and figure out how to interject yourself into that process. So it's another reason we focus a lot in that rapid prototyping class on the business model canvas. Like I got no business putting a business model canvas creation aspect into a rapid prototyping course. But at the end of the day, for whatever client we take into that class, they need to understand the client's business model. So I have them go through and just build a business model canvas. Who are the customers? Who are the segments? What's the value proposition? What's the revenue streams? What partnerships would they need to invoke those revenue streams? So really just thinking about things from a business standpoint is what we try and go after a lot.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Shout out to you. So Chris is laughing out loud and he's saying very poignant points. I want to ask you, Eric, who are a few of your favorite brands that you believe are doing amazing work in terms of user experience design and just thinking about how do they think about the end-to-end experience?
Oh, man. I'm too cynical to have any positives anymore. I think, from this mindset that we had earlier, about how I think UX is just kind of stalled out. It's caused me to just kind of look at everything, being done the same way still. So I'm really trying to just try and focus on how we can start to push things further. I mean, we leverage a ton of stuff. Don't get me wrong. Before we start any of our designs, I mean, we absolutely go through and scour through all the different startups that are plowing forward on stuff. We've been leveraging a lot. Let's see, Luke Orblowski, his blog post, he's got a good one on kind of a case study of all the scooters, the ride sharing scooters, and all of their kind of intro tutorials, and just little companies like that are able to very quickly see a business opportunity and deliver something to market that still has a good experience. I think that's kind of that's what we have gotten good at. Like I said, the thing we've been focusing on for years is speed. Like, how do we quickly get a product to market that still has a good experience? So we've gotten good at that. And the tools like Figma and Sketch and, other tools like that allow us to kind of be quicker from a UX standpoint, at least on the design side. The research side, we haven't seen much, I don't say any, maybe change as far as like tool sets. Like, we're still doing stuff on the research side the same way we have, with the major change being remote, of course. But we've been doing remote long before all the COVID stuff, in an industry standpoint, just because, again, from an ROI standpoint, it's so much cheaper to do stuff remote versus in person. But we've seen a couple of the remote tools. Zoom's, of course, gotten better and allowed us to do some stuff, allowed us to share our phones over Zoom so we can do mobile studies within Zoom now and things like that. But no, from an actual, like, just apps that are doing something really mind-blowing, I don't know. I've been so focused on this boating stuff and all these boating software lately that it's not that good. I just look at a bunch of weather apps these days. That's pretty much all I'm doing. No, I don't have anything that comes to mind, honestly, right away from something that's like blown my mind recently. Nah.
There's not one brand that you can think of.
Nah. No, I mean, honestly, they're all pretty, and I'm not dogging anybody. It's not like everything sucks right now. It's just I haven't been focused on all the latest cutting edge stuff. I've been doing so much more, like I said, on the boat. I mean, there's a slick thing we were looking at last night on boat stuff. One of the biggest things for people on boats is falling overboard at night, because if you fall overboard at night and nobody finds you, like, of course, you're dead in seconds, depending on the temperature of the water. So there's a cool little device that's just a $50 kind of RFID thing that you just clip on yourself, and then it just sets up a kind of a tether right around the boat. So as soon as an individual breaks that plane, every cell phone on the boat just starts screaming, to wake up anybody else. So cool little things like that we've been playing around with a lot. You there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. There were some issues there for a second. Don't know what happened. So that's so weird. That's so weird. Man, we need to get 5G.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
5G needs to come.
No, that'd be dope. Yeah, that'll be dope. That's the other thing we've been looking at on the boat, because that's a problem, right? As we start moving everything to remote and all these remote classes and stuff, internet's the biggest blocker right now.
Yeah.
There's a cool company. There's a cool company that's got a dome that you can put on your boat, and it'll get 30 megabits a second from anywhere in the world. So you could be out in the middle of the ocean, crossing the Pacific, and get 30 megasecond. But it's a cheap $2,500 a month for it right now. So that's a bit.
That's amazing, actually. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I wanna, have you, Eric, what would be a takeaway that you have for our amazing community on one, how they can be more intentional about designing their careers, and more importantly, what is the quickest way for them to start learning about user experience?
Designing careers, dude, you'd be so amazed at how many people just haven't written out a plan. Like, just write a plan. Like, I talk to so many individuals that are, I try and always make sure that I surround myself by people that are older and smarter than I am. And it's getting to a point now where I talk to so many individuals about like retirement and stuff, and they're late 50s and haven't thought about it. They're like, I hadn't thought about it. I don't have a plan. I haven't thought it through. I guess I should start looking at that. So, Jamie and I have really we've been diligent since high school about always just having some kind of plan about, what is it we're trying to achieve and what is it going to take to get there. And the plans, of course, complete BS because it changes all the time, but it at least gives you a goal to strive for, as things move. You just learn to adopt the plan and, pivot and keep plowing forward. So, I mean, even us moving onto this boat and selling the house and setting up a career that we could work remotely, that's been 5-6 years in the making. It's a big plan to work that out. So absolutely. First thing, I'm a dork for Gantt charts, as you may remember. So, I'd pop over to, what tool am I using right now? Team Gantt is what I'll be using in this summer course. I'd pop over to Team Gantt and just start mapping out, plans, and make it ridiculous. Make it, I want to, have a startup in 2 years. Like, great. Start with an end goal and then just start backing into that. What will it actually take to get there? And a lot of times it's a useful exercise because it humbles you and it reminds you that shit ain't easy. It takes a lot to do stuff, but it also at least gives you a plan. I got contacted by 2 students from another university earlier this week, and they're like, hey, we created a startup. Can you help us get work? And it's like, what? You created a startup without any idea of how you were going to get customers? That doesn't make sense, So it's like, so I pointed them to that business model canvas. I'm like, y'all need to go back and kind of start from square one. Y'all need a business plan, a business model. Sit down and go back and again, it's not
the fundamentals.
And it's not that it's not speaking down on anybody. It's that nobody's shared that information with them. Nobody's told them. So that's why I think the biggest thing I'm trying to do now is just take anything that I've learned, especially all the mistakes, and just spread that around. Look, dude, I've tried a couple startups and I hadn't thought it through any more than you thought it through, and it's going to last about 2 months. So just stop now and pivot and think of this stuff through a little bit, and if one person listens to that and it helps accelerate them, then it's all for the good. Yeah. And as far as, selfishly, I can answer as far as kind of in furthering their UX career, I'm kicking off a 14-week, 7-sprint online UX projects course. So that'll launch, probably going to launch in the next 2 days. I'm going to start putting up YouTube videos and stuff so people can follow along. But I've got 10 of my master's level students and a research and design agency that has kind of a problem statement. And the students are going to spend 7 sprints going all the way from the generative phase to hi-fi prototypes. And I'm going to document everything, all the Zoom calls, every meeting. I've got the Gantt chart up there. I'm going to put up all of our notes, all of our documentation, all the prototypes. Everything will be online. So students that don't have access to maybe a master's education, can kind of follow along and see what these students do and what their process is. And honestly, same thing as learning business. It's just hearing the words, hearing the vocabulary and just starting to get familiar with stuff. So yeah, I've got that kicking off soon. So just, I guess, follow me on LinkedIn and I'll post up there when that comes out. But I'm really stoked to get that approved by the university. So it's going to be the first, from what we could see in our competitive analysis, it's the first UX university course that's going to be put online, for free. You got a bunch of boot camps and stuff that are online, but this is an actual full user experience course at the master's level that I'm just recording and putting online for everybody. So yeah, we got that going on.
That's huge. So shout out to Chris who said, thanks, Eric, for your candid feedback and advice. What else, Eric?
Yeah, honestly, other than that, of course I can promote the UX educational track because I went through it and now I teach it. But I have absolutely had, I don't want to say everybody needs to go get a master's degree, but again, I live in a little bit of a bubble. All the industry folks that reach out to me for students all still require a master's degree. So, you're going to be blocked out of some of the major corporations if you don't have a master's degree from a UX standpoint, but that's not to say it's a must. I've had, I taught 1 undergrad class, and out of that undergrad class, I had 2 students go on to have UX careers, and one's living in Germany now, and she's been at 2 startups, and the other one was at Patagonia doing some stuff for Patagonia's website, and I forgot where he went on to. So from the undergrad level, we're starting to go that route as well. And at the high school, we just got approved for an undergrad course, or sorry, not course, but program. So we're actually going to offer an undergrad UX program as well now at the high school. So yeah, we've got that. Just tons of books. I mean, honestly, it's a lot of same way everybody learning everything days, just reading online and watching YouTube videos. I mean, you can pick up a lot of the fundamentals that way. Students that come into the high school, I hit them up first with just some Figma and some Sketch tutorials. And I'm like, summer before your program, just start learning Figma or Sketch if you think you want to be a designer. Like, don't waste your time and dollars asking me to teach you how to push buttons in Sketch. Like, that's all online on YouTube. Go learn that stuff so that we can actually focus on other stuff while you're here.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it goes into where education and learning is going, right? It's moving in a direction where, you can learn everything you need online, but, you're still going to need practitioners and people who are amazing at their crafts like you, who are sharing this information and like through mentorship and kind of like community, right? But, we're definitely not moving towards a future where you have to be in a classroom to learn. That's just not going to happen.
No, not at all. And I mean, there's pros and cons. I think I noticed an absolute con whenever the pandemic hit and my in-person classes went to remote classes. But honestly, it only lasted for about 3 weeks. I think it took about 3 weeks for students to adjust, because what has to happen is you now have to motivate yourself, right? There's a motivation to, if your butt isn't in the seat at the time class starts and I make fun of you, you should be there. There's a little bit of a motivation to wake up in the morning because I'm going to talk mess about you if you're not in class. Versus online, if I posted a video and I just hope you watch that video that week, like, I'm not there to goof on you to give you any incentive, to watch that video. It's 100% having to come from you, which it should anyways, because you're paying a ton of dough to get the education. So why you're not learning while you're paying all the money doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but to each their own. But students started to fall into a groove, I bet. I think it's just a little bit of they got to change their cadence and say, okay, instead of waking up at 9 and going to class, I need to wake up at 9 and sit at the computer for an hour as if I were in class, So it took a little bit of time for them to adjust, I think, from everything going on with COVID, whenever everything happened from that standpoint. But absolutely, from the online learning point, that's where we got to keep pushing, because we have such an inequality of information transfer right now that if we're going to overcome the inequality that we have, it has to be because we can get information out to more people, right? So that's one of the reasons that I was so stoked that the university allowed me to put all this on YouTube, because it's like they recognize that not everybody can afford a master's level education. Like, not everybody has access, to come to the University of Texas, and they still feel an obligation to educate those individuals, So they were absolutely on the path of like, yeah, for sure. Like, it's not like we got to hold on to all this stuff from a proprietary standpoint. Like, the goal is to educate folks. So by whatever means necessary, let's go try and do that. So that's why I put together this YouTube course, and I'm sure it'll suck this first time. But again, speaking to our failures, I'm never going to learn how bad it sucks if I don't put it out there, and I'll never know how to fix it if I don't put it out there. So we're going to go ahead and launch this 14-week course and just keep adapting things from there to keep things going online. But absolutely, I think it's the future. But back to your internet 5G request, that's going to be our biggest blocker, right? We're still going to have that. We're still going to have that inequality gap, because not everybody's going to have access to watch my hour-long videos on YouTube because they've got a shitty connection and all they've got is their mobile phone, So, I mean, we still have that problem. So hopefully Elon's going to fix that, I think. Who's working on that? Elon and Zuckerberg. Figure out how to get internet everywhere, and then I'll just deliver stuff. But no, I think it'd be good.
I love it.
Especially, I mean, to my other point about how do we expand what we're doing from a UX, focus, I think passing the information out globally allows you to see how much bullshit some of this UX stuff is in other countries. So it allows us to adopt and see, dude, our user base is so much broader than what we're talking about. I saw a dope project that they were working on at what was it? It wasn't the NHO. It was like USEP or something like that. But they had a cool just literacy app that they were working on for people in like Saudi Arabia, so just cool little things like that where they're using Big Bird to teach kids how to read and stuff in Saudi Arabia. So cool things like that were popping up as we start to expand globally around things. I think it'll also open our eyes up to just the different colors. You know, whenever I see students come into my prototyping class, the color palettes they come up with, I'm like, that's complete crap. But then at the end of the day, I'm such a American centric view that it's stupid for me to say that, you know? So it's really like, holy cow, like some of the color schemes that they use, like, you know, we laugh all the time about, you know, the students coming who have had internships like at Alibaba or something like that. Like the amount of information density on an Alibaba advertising screen would never pass in the US. And it's not to say one's better or worse. It's just different, you know, it's just different. And that gets back to my point where it's silly that as US companies, we don't design more for those individual markets. You know, we're going to continue to lose. There's a reason why Alibaba's done so much better than PayPal and Amazon and everybody in China, because they're actually from there, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and they understand what they want at a local level.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the coolest things that I remember from early in my career, I went to a conference, and I think it was Campbell's Soup was talking about how they tried to make a push into China years ago and just failed miserably. And the whole, I mean, and the whole concept was like, whatever culture they tried to go into, the thought of feeding your family something out of a can was such a like disrespectful thought that it was just a non-starter for them. You know, they're like, it's like, you feed your dog something out of the can. Like, I wouldn't feed my family something out of a can, you know? So it's just culturally, it was just a no-go. Like, there was no amount of marketing or, you know, pretty colors or rebranding or logoing that would fix the fact that at a root level, it was food coming out of a can, and they would never allow such a thing in that culture. So that's where I think, you know, UX research and all really comes into play. But it also kind of shows you how it's not in effect, because a company as large as Campbell's made that mistake, which clearly shows they didn't go do a lot of ethnography work or UX research ahead of time, you know?
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
You know what, Eric? Thank you so much for being on today's episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, A Guide podcast. Where can the lovely community follow you to learn more about your work and all the amazing things you're doing?
Yeah, just LinkedIn right now. Just hit me up at Eric Nordquist over on LinkedIn. Follow me there. And then I'm going to start opening up everything on YouTube and start getting these channels going. We've got a podcast possibly in the works as well. So lots of stuff we're going to be working on. Yeah, as we try and figure out how to move this UX learning online and try and really push it to the next levels of thought. So all from the boat.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for being on this episode of Unleashing the Future of Work. Eric, talk to you soon, buddy.
Man. Awesome, man. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Peace. With that said, if you love this episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, A Guide podcast, make sure to check out guideapp.co. We are starting early registrations for our beta program. We will be launching in T-3 weeks, and we're really excited about it. So check out guideapp.co if you're interested in being a course creator. And more importantly, if you're interested in gaining a skill. All right. So make sure to check out guideapp.co. And if you are interested in being on a future episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, A Guide podcast, check out UTFOWW.com, UTFOW.com, and let us know. We're looking for sponsors, and we're always looking within our community. All right, y'all. Talk to y'all soon.